How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we're in my photo blind today. I'm in my backyard and I woke up this morning, I looked outside and there was a white-throated sparrow in the yard. So they're starting to come back little by little. It's a species I started getting last year in my yard, but I never really got a good photo, so I'm going to try to get that today. We'll see what else is coming through. If they're back, it means other things are back, so hopefully it's a busy day. Another thing I want to do is show you my photo setup. So I built a $40 squirrel-proof feeding post, and I built this specifically because it's great for photos. You just set up a branch on top of it. You can set up multiple if you want, and all you have to do is wait for the birds to show up, land on the branch, and then you take your photos. So this is my first setup. It's really bare bones, very simple. And the next one is even more simple. I took 2 hooks, put those ones in the ground, attached a thistle feeder to it, and then took another fallen branch and put that on top. I wanted to show you this because it's really not complicated to do, and the backgrounds in my yard aren't very good. When we came to this house, there was 2 big trees that had to come down, and it really opened up the yard. But what it did is it left open a bunch of open areas. So when it comes to backgrounds, my options are pretty limited. It's either a fence, a maple tree with no leaves in it, so just branches essentially, telephone pole, and there's a cedar in the back over there that is probably the nicest background that I could have, but really not many options. But I want to show you that doesn't really matter, especially when you're this close. I'm using a photo blind, so I'm only about 6-7 feet away, and it's really blurring out the background and isolating your subject, so it's really not that big of a deal. It's also important to note that I'm about 3 feet off the ground, so when a bird lands on the ground, the perspective is a little off. For those shots, I would rather be directly on my stomach, right on the floor. I'll show you guys an example from a few months ago when I was photographing a pine siskin. He was feeding on sunflower seeds on the ground, and it made for a very unappealing perspective because you can see all the sunflower seeds. But I got down on the ground right on my stomach and it blurs out everything. You don't see any of the sunflower seeds. It makes for a much better perspective. So just a little tip for you guys: if you're photographing something on the ground, try to get down to its level, because I'm telling you, the photos that you get out of it will be so much better. Another tip I want to give you: if you're using a hide, whether it's in your backyard or out in the field, when there's no action, and there will be time where there's no action, try to have your camera pointed in the most ideal spot. So for my current setup, I'll either have it pointed to the birch in hopes that something will land on it, or I'll have it set up to the other perch. What you want to do is just pre-focus, have a composition ready, because there might not be any action for 20-30 minutes, and when something shows up, you want to be ready. If your camera's pointing down, focused to like infinity or something, that's really not useful. So that's just something to keep in mind. When there's no action, you want to be prepared for when the action does arrive. I also decided to add a temporary water station in my yard. For now, it's just a really simple setup. $1 plastic tray, filled it with a bit of water, have a rock so they can land on something, and a few leaves at the bottom, which I change every couple days. Look at this robin. This robin's absolutely loving it. Just going to town, flicking up leaves. So water, very easy option to provide to birds. Just make sure you change it every few days. Just got the white-throated sparrow. He was in one of the garden beds. I went out before and threw seeds all over the yard, and I put them in the garden bed specifically because it's a little bit thicker. There's some plants from last year that are still around, so those provide some cover. I'm also getting some great shots of grackles. I know some people hate grackles, but I love them. They're beautiful. They're great practice. If ever you want to practice, your backyard is a great option. I mean, birds are just sitting here. You can fire off so many shots, and you can really try things that you don't try in the field. Like, you don't want to ruin a shot in the field because you're trying something new. So in your backyard, it's a great place to experiment. Well, it's not just the white-throated sparrows that are back. So I have a pair of these that hang around my yard, and I guess they're coming out now too. I really don't mind having them, actually. Some people hate having, squirrels and groundhogs and all these pest birds in their backyard. I I love having everything. I'm not going to complain. I actually like having squirrels in my yard. I think squirrels are great. I'm not just saying that because I have a feeding post that prevents squirrels from climbing up it, but I feed them food on the floor. I don't mind having them in the yard. They're great for two things. One of them is getting birds to come into your yard. So say I'm in my blind, or say I'm taking photos in the backyard, some birds might be reluctant to show up, but once the squirrels start showing up, it kind of gives them a little bit more ease to fly into the yard and start feeding themselves. So I like them for that. And another thing I like them for is they're great alarm calls. There's a few stray cats in the neighborhood and they come into our yard every so often. So it's a nice little thing to have the squirrels around. They'll take off and all the birds will follow with them. So I don't think I've ever seen one of the cats get a bird, so that's a good thing. I feel like if you know how to manage certain pests, they're not really pests at all. They're just another part of your yard. So don't get too stressed out over having, you know, starlings and grackles and house sparrows. They all play a part in your backyard.